It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews.
There's going to be much higher expectations, sense of awareness of what we bring to the table.
Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Throws, ends it, yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in. It's another edition of the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. Love to hear from you as well. 435-339-0321. That's the Young Power Sports of Logan text line if you want to chime in and be a part of the program. And still a lot of different things to get through today. We've got some Pac-12 news. We do. So we'll share that. Broke earlier this morning. We'll get into that. Any updates in the portal for basketball or football? We'll give you any updates that we have found there. And what's the latest going on with the NBA playoffs? As it's been this weird combination. There's been some games that have just been boring as heck, and there's been real snoozers. But then we've had a number of games that have just been fantastic. And last night we were treated to both. We had a snoozer and we had a fantastic finish. So we'll get into that and get your reactions to what's going on in the NBA playoffs as well. And always feel welcome to chime in on these topics or any others that you want to ask us about. 435-339-0321 on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. 9315. Eric will be so sad that he can't have a dog show interrupt the start of his games anymore.
What?
A dog show interrupt the start of my games? I'm not sure.
I'm not following.
You'll have to remind me. If this is something we've talked about in the past, I'm going to need a refresher on that. But let's start off with this. We've got to start off the right way in doing this, Jason.
We've got some significant breaking news tonight.
We got some breaking news.
The latest in conference realignment on the Conference Realignment and Expansion Show.
Yes, we have new details regarding the Pac-12. Not about future membership, but they do have their TV deal figured out for this upcoming fall season. And by and large, it was discussed that whatever they're discussing for this next year will likely be what they're also working on for the future of the conference. And Jason, if that's the case, I'm pretty excited about what this means. Now, we did have this discussion back and forth. We saw some of the reports about a month ago suggesting the Pac-12 may have to decide, do they want more money or do they want more exposure? What this announcement today tells us is they have focused in on, we would rather have exposure, because what they're getting with the upcoming fall football season with Oregon State and Washington State are games on CBS, ESPN, and now suddenly I forgot the third one. There's three options for
CBS Sports,
and
CW,
CBS Sports.
and
And CW, yes, CW. And so these are all on very recognizable platforms and easy to find and very reasonable kick times as well. No weird, obscure kick times for these broadcasts of these games. So it's pretty exciting to see what the Pac-12 is putting together here, in at least for this season, and if that's an indication of what's to come.
Yeah, and the hope is that this may be something of what the Pac-12 is looking at going forward. It is a little interesting, though, when you look at which games are on CBS, which games are on ESPN. None of the Inter-Mountain West games or their games against Mountain West opponents, or it's all major conference teams. Oregon State against Cal, that's on ESPN. Oregon State against Houston, That's on ESPN. You do have Oregon State, Washington State. That does make it on CBS. But then Washington State against Washington. That's on CBS. Look at all the other games. They're all on the CW. So it seems like ESPN and CBS are picking through the matchups and saying, okay, you're playing Cal, you're playing Houston, you're playing Washington. We'll take those for ESPN and CBS. But basically everything else is left to the CW. When they're playing Fresno State, or I guess Wake Forest is on the CW, so I stand corrected in one aspect.
ACC has some stuff there.
Yeah, so the ACC there. But Lafayette, Sam Houston, Idaho, it's like a lot of that's to the CW. And I think if the Pac-12 ends up going this way, I think you're going to see that where a limited amount of ESPN, CBS games a limited amount of games will be picked up by CBS and ESPN, but only a handful and only like the marquee matchups where the CW may end up representing the bulk of the Pac-12's media, where they are picking up most of the games. A lot like how the Mountain West Network picks up most of the games, and then the marquee matchups, so to speak, tend to get picked up by CBS. In Fox when you're in the Mountain West, but it would seem to be CBS and potentially ESPN. That could kind of be the new dynamic with the Pac-12. It'll just be interesting to see to what degree, a marquee game consists of. Is it only going to be if you're playing power conference opponents? Or are your big conference games going to be picked up by ESPN and CBS? Because you have that to a degree with the Mountain West. The biggest games in the Mountain West get picked up by Fox or CBS. You want that to be out there on ESPN and CBS when, late season matchup and it's your two best teams. You want that to be featured on one of the big networks. You want your big early season matchups to be on the big networks. So hopefully this is a sign that, hey, the big matchups get picked up by the big networks, but then you have a broad media deal for everyone.
Yeah, and this is looking at these games, looking at this announcement from the Pac-12 earlier today. It dropped really first thing this morning. Comment from Commissioner Teresa Gold. She says, having Pac-12 football featured across three leading broadcasters in CBS, the CW, and ESPN in 2025 will provide tremendous exposure to showcase Oregon State, Washington State, and our brand in the Pac-12's final season before expansion. We're thrilled to continue our partnership with the CW, to welcome a new partner in CBS Sports, and to see a return of Pac-12 football on ESPN. And they flat out said, in some of their releases in social media, like, hey, we're there's going to be some showcases featuring some future members. The new Pac-12 double feature on September 6th is what they're calling it. The CW will showcase a pair of future Pac-12 matchups. There'll be actually a triple header: Fresno State at Oregon State and San Diego State at Washington State is what they're calling it. And so there are going to be a number of games that they're leaning into. These are future opponents for this conference, and where you want to make sure we highlight those.
Yeah, you want to try and drum up as much excitement as possible. You want the media deal to be exciting. You want to be getting the showcase that you can get these matchups on network television and in good time slots. And they're doing that. I know the CW isn't the sexiest network, but it's one that will get a lot of eyeballs.
Yeah, it's growing. The ACC is involved with it too.
Yeah,
it's not just the Pac-12.
Yeah, it'll be very accessible. And so I think the ability to get these teams on TV and easily, I think that's going to be a positive for the Pac-12. At this point, though, the biggest questions will remain: how much money is the conference going to pull in from this? Because that will determine its future. That will determine its status among the conferences. Will it be the top group of 5 or group of 4, whatever we're calling it, league? Or is it going to be, basically a peer with the Mountain West, a peer with the AAC? If it's level with the Mountain West and the AAC, that's a failure. So we need these questions answered. We need them answered pretty soon. The alarm bells are going off in a lot of fans' heads. There's a lot of people worried. So now that you got this settled, now that you got this kind of preview of what the media deal could be, let's get this whole thing hashed out. Let's get it done by early May, ideally by the end of April. But you know what? I guess this is the best we're going to get by the end of April. But get something done in early May. Get it done by Mother's Day. Hopefully you're not waiting until Father's Day to get it done.
Yeah.
Or we're really going to be getting worried.
It just gets harder and harder for that 8th football playing school to make the transition that is needed. But, last year they didn't get their media deal announced for their fall football schedule until about mid-May.
Yeah.
So this is maybe a little bit ahead of schedule compared to what they did last year.
I don't know if that's is comparable, though, because that's two teams saying, hey, we need somebody to pick up our a handful of games, last second. This is a whole media deal involving, basically a brand new conference.
Yeah.
And also negotiating what happens
a lot more moving parts.
And what happens when we bring in another new team or 2 or 3. Like, because you got to negotiate that as well. Like, is the network going to be paying more money for each of those schools so that you're not diluting the media money that goes out to the other schools? So you got to figure all this out. This is a lot more complicated. The fact they got it done late last year makes sense. They had other things they were worrying about. They're trying to figure out their schedule. And then it's like, oh, yeah, let's get these games on TV. And so they found a good media partner for that. This is a whole lot more robust, but it's a whole lot more important. And they've had a lot longer to get it done and a lot longer to focus on it. So that's why it's frustrating they haven't gotten it done, because they need to get it done. There's a ticking clock here that has massive consequences. The worst consequence for last year, if they don't get a TV deal, is one season of games is a little harder to watch on TV. If you don't get this TV deal done, you don't get it done well, that could sink the potential, or maybe not sink the conference, but set it back 5 or 10 years in terms of its potential of becoming the best, or even like you call a fringe power conference, as is the goal, I would say, of the Pac-12.
Yeah, right. And this deal shows that while there may have been other opportunities on the table that might have projected more money to the conference and its member institutions, getting maximum exposure is the most important thing. If you're a good team but nobody sees you or knows about you, does it really matter? No. But if you're a good team and you're seen in a lot of national places and you're part of the national discussion, your odds of getting involved with other big time opportunities just enhances and it becomes more relevant. The other thing that was interesting to note in the release today, at the bottom, they highlighted what the future Pac-12 is going to look like. Look at all the accomplishments of our new member institutions or even our existing ones, and look at the things we've accomplished in football, how many times they've been in the top 25, what they've looked like in the NCAA tournament, and all this other stuff, and all of our engagement and all of our different platforms. And then there's this note. The Pac-12 will add at least one more football-playing all-sports member to begin with the 2026-27 season, not reflected in the figures and highlights above.
So that sounds like they know who it's going to be.
And then it referenced Octagon is their partner through all this. They continue the conference's transformational process to finalize its future media rights partnerships for the new Pac-12 beginning in 2026. Octagon served as advisor for the Pac-12's 2025 media rights agreements.
Yeah, and that just feeds into like the notion that this could very well be a preview of things to come. That this partnership where it's kind of three-pronged, where you got CBS and ESPN, picking up the marquee games, with the CW being kind of the main showcase of all the conference games. Because, it wouldn't make a ton of sense for ESPN to step in and say, hey, you know what? We really want to broadcast Oregon State against Houston. Like, we're just fixing to showcase that game at a 7:30 p.m. time. So is that Pacific time? So 8:30 p.m. For us.
Yeah.
Like, we're really itching to broadcast that game. We're really itching CBS to have Oregon State and Washington State. It's like, no, they didn't just come out of the blue and say, hey, we really want to broadcast this game this year. They want this to be a partnership going forward. At least that's what I would assume. It'd be kind of weird if they stepped in for one season and then like step back and say, hey, we don't want to do this anymore. Like it'd just be weird.
It would be. But yeah, so that's the big news today. The media deal for this season, upcoming season, has been formally announced. And that is a big deal to get that done, get that inked, get it out there. And then they can start finalizing terms for 2026 and beyond. And look, these are with the Mountain West ending its scheduling agreement with Oregon State and Washington State, it provided them opportunities to go out and schedule very different types of teams to play them, which can make for some interesting TV matchups. But they're still going to need something a little more solid going forward, and they need to know what that's going to look like. And I don't know that unless there's a real surprise candidate out there that's just been waiting in the wings, I can't imagine that the TV deal would change much more if they know who that eighth member is today or not. Yeah. My guess is what they worked out for this announcement today is pretty much what they're working on for the next broadcast term, whether they really know for sure who that eighth member is or not.
Yeah, barring adding someone like Memphis, I don't think there's a team out there that really changes the game, especially since they're saying they're adding one. If they were adding three, like if you were looking at a trio of like Memphis, Tulane, Texas State or something like that, or UTSA, pick whichever Texas school you want, that would maybe be a material change. But with them seemingly looking at just the one to establish their foothold and say, hey, look, let's just get this one member and let's just get this settled, then yeah, there isn't really a team out there, again, potentially other than Memphis, that really shifts things, where Memphis is a solid, football school and obviously one of the best mid-major basketball teams. So it does seem like, whoever that team isn't going to make a huge difference. The reason that eighth team does matter, it's just to the effect of, again, trying to stick with the prestige of being that top Group of 5 conference, because that's what the Pac-12 is aiming for. If they're adding, if you're looking at your desperation options, which that's where you're getting Texas State and people are even throwing out New Mexico State and some of these other teams, which that's where,
not going to happen.
Yeah, that's where you'd be truly desperate. You'd lose some of that prestige, where you're not adding, a Colorado State, a Fresno State, a Utah State, where these are some of the best, either in football and or basketball, some of the best mid-major Group of 5 teams in the country. So, or at least in the West. So, yeah, that's kind of the only way that eighth school would matter. But even if it is a decent addition, the media deal is not going to go way up or way down, depending on who they add.
So what are your initial reactions to this new media deal for the Pac-12 and what it could mean for Utah State in the future of the conference? 435-339-0321 here on the Full Court Press. Young Power Sports of Logan has a great variety of different power sports available on site. You go check it out at 1903 South, 800 West, or even check out their inventory online, youngpowersportslogan.com. You can always give them a call as well, 435-755-7111. So, yeah, big news today for Utah State fans, for those following the schools leaving the Mountain West, heading to the Pac-12. If the Pac-12 announcing their media rights deal for this upcoming season. Now, granted, this is only for a few months because the Washington State and Oregon State take all their other sports into the West Coast Conference. So this is football only. But we've heard multiple times that what they're working out for broadcasts of games in the fall would likely be a parallel discussion to what they're working on for the 2026 season and beyond with a full new reimagined Pac-12.
Yeah, and I think it's a good sign, just with what we're seeing with ESPN and CBS being involved, being on these major networks, and at least looking at this, we're not seeing anything absolutely crazy with the times. Because, yeah, sure, some of them are like 10:30 Eastern with Cal and even a 10:30 Friday game. Like you're banished to 10:30 Eastern time on a Friday. Usually the point of Friday is you can get a 7 p.m., 6 to 8 Eastern, but it's not like 12:30, midnight or beyond. Like these are games. It's Pac-12 after dark. You're going to get back to Pac-12 after dark. You get a nice 8 p.m. CBS game against Washington State. So you're not doing anything crazy. You're not having to play on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday. You got one Friday game and a lot of other Saturday games where some of the big time matchups with these power conference teams against Cal, Houston, Wake Forest, Washington, they're all being played on major networks. Of course, Wake Forest is on the CW, but you're getting on the major networks. You're getting decent time slots. If not for the East Coast, you're getting decent time slots for your own viewership. 7:30 local time, that's good for these West Coast teams. So I think if this is a preview for what they're going to end up with for the full media deal for the expanded, the new Pac-12, I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah, there's 13 games that'll be part of this broadcast arrangement with CBS Sports, CW, and ESPN. Of those 13, 7 of them start at 7 or 7:30 Pacific time. So, and the other times, you got a few 12:30 starts. You got like a 3:30, a 4:30, or a 5. So these are all very normal, solid times for. Now it is a little bit, maybe a little bit later on the East Coast, but still these seem to be very reasonable times for these kickoffs.
That's been fairly typical of the Pac-12 because they've had the Pac-12 after dark, aspect of this for a while. Because you want to play a lot of these games 6 to 7 p.m. local time. That obviously doesn't make it very palatable towards the East Coast, and that's where the Pac-12 kind of fell off in a lot of ways, is because you had these East Coast snobs who didn't want to stay up at 11, 12 p.m. to watch, even if it was a really solid Pac-12 game. And so maybe the new Pac-12 is going to end up falling into that, that same trap. But these, for your fans at the very least, and for West Coast fans in general, anyone who's west of the Mississippi, these are all solid times that you can still watch a football game at. And so I think this is, again, if this is that preview, I like what I'm seeing. But of course, Eric, is 9315 points out on the text line that there's the even better possibility for this, and that's that you won't have a dog show interrupting your game.
Yeah, apparently that's what he was referring to earlier.
Yeah, I thought so. 9315 pointing out that there was the
Westminster dog show.
Yeah, and it delayed. He was saying it was a basketball or football game. I thought it was a basketball game. At least I was pretty sure it was one of the basketball games. Was that a road game? I can't remember whether or not I was impacted, because there were games at home that got delayed, and it didn't matter to me because I was just watching the game.
Right.
But I think it might have been a road game. But yeah, it was Fox doing their pre-taped dog show. That I have my own issues with dog shows and what they represent, but yeah, just having that and doing post game of a dog show was delaying.
Yeah, they kept doing interviews like, oh, it's a dog, okay?
it's a dog. It ran through a hoop.
Yeah, tell them who won and then move on. Do the post game interview somewhere else. There's a live game.
We don't want to watch dogs jumping through hoops. We want to watch guys throwing balls through hoops.
That's right.
That's what we want.
We want to talk about dogs. Like he was a dog tonight.
We're talking about a different kind of dog.
Yes, that's right. He's got that dog in him. Yes.
Speaking of dog in him, men's basketball transfer portal. I guess so. Are dogging you, betting on yourself, all those things that you post on Twitter, along with hashtag that being said.
Right.
So let's kind of get an update on everything here, because I had to give kind of a big old facelift to my transfer tracker, the Google sheet. The Utah State transfer tracker is kind of sat a little dormant because most of Utah State's portal business is pretty much concluded. Nobody else can enter the transfer portal barring a coach being fired, hired, or whatever. where that would open a 30-day window, and none of the Mountain West teams are likely to experience that at this point. But the transfer portal starting to shape up pretty good for some of these teams. UNLV especially. I was poo-pooing their portal haul not just this past week, and they ended up signing a guy who Evan Mia, his transfer rankings, had ranked in the top 100, which at this point would be the highest, but actually a fairly comfortable margin over any other Mountain West transfer. I don't know if I'm going to say his name right. Kamani Hamilton out of High Point. Averaged 13 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2 assists. He's 6'7", 215-pound forward.
Yeah, you know what? This is not surprising. We've seen great recruiting classes, and we've seen great rosters before at UNLV. There's an allure with its city, with its facilities, and there is some history. Granted, it is pretty far in the past at this point.
Yeah, we're talking way in the past. That's about the same relationship between BYU and their national championship days.
But the difference here is it's a different coach, and so this isn't anything necessarily new that we've heard with the great recruiting or great transfers coming in. But what we don't know is, can this guy really make it work on the court? Can Pastner work his magic and make this team relevant? Because the fan support has definitely waned in Las Vegas with this basketball team, but there's talent there. If they start winning games, they start making it exciting. There is no other NBA franchise there yet, so this is really the opportunity to reclaim that market with a decent basketball team.
Yeah, and I think you've kind of hit it there with UNLV. They've really got to prove that they can put these guys and make a team, put these guys together and make a team. Because they've had some ballers. They had Deyton Thomas, but then despite how good he was as a freshman, co-freshman of the year with the guy who went on to become an All-American, Deyton Thomas didn't make that same jump. Deyton Thomas really should have made the Donovan Dent jump. That's what he should have done this last year.
Yeah, he had the opportunity.
And he didn't. Yeah, he had all the opportunity and he just didn't. He had the team and he could have done anything with that team, been a star, but things just didn't come together. And there was some bad injury luck with UNLV. They've had some rough injury luck the last couple of years, to be honest, with guys getting preseason injuries that hurt their depth, particularly their front court. But yeah, it's kind of in a I'll believe it when I see it kind of situation where it's like, you like what you're seeing out of UNLV, where they are at this point, you can, if you want to say they have the best transfer haul, I wouldn't necessarily super disagree with you. I'd probably still go with Boise State. They've done a lot of great work, even if it's low volume. You can also look at Colorado State. They've done pretty well. But UNLV, you can argue they have the best transfer haul. They have, arguably the best transfer, depending on the rankings you're looking at. And they've done very well in their volume. They haven't picked up any guys that are like, I don't know about that guy. Because that's kind of what New Mexico has done. They've picked up a couple of guys who are potentially really exciting. Anthony Chole's a really exciting player. But they've also picked up some guys where it's just like, I don't know, man. I'm not sure if I quite see it. Maybe they can end up being a baller, but who knows? So it will be kind of interesting to see if UNLV is able to make that push up toward the top. But I think right now you're still kind of sitting with the top three teams would probably still have to be Boise State, Utah State, and San Diego State. I think those are your three most, three biggest teams, I think, because they both combine good transfer portal hauls and a decent amount of returning production. So there's just a lot fewer questions about them. But I think just watching Colorado State, New Mexico, and UNLV, those are the three to watch for in terms of, and maybe you could throw in Nevada as well, like teams that have a lot of question marks, but one of them's got to answer those questions. Utah State kept doing it. Mm-hmm. So you imagine one of these teams, one of those four teams I mentioned, one of them's got to figure it out and be a contender in that top four, potentially even challenging for the Mountain West title with the Aggies, Broncos, and Aztecs.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest differentiator between what's going on at UNLV and some of these other schools is just that there are known quantities coming back. And with UNLV, there's so many new faces, and it's a new coach who's been out of the game for a little while. And while it may look sexy and exciting on paper, we just don't know. Maybe it's going to work great, and they'll take the conference by storm. Maybe it'll be a work in progress. It takes a while, but it could be anything in between. So that's why there's a lot of fanboys in Las Vegas getting excited about UNLV and already claiming they're going to be the conference contenders, and it's going to be a full Thomas and Mack, and they're going to set the Mountain West on fire. I appreciate the enthusiasm because they haven't had it for a little while. But let's wait to see what it really works out and how it really works out for them, because history tells us at UNLV, it looks great in the offseason, but once it gets rolling, it fails to really materialize very often.
There's a certain irony with us talking about what matters like on paper and as far as returning minutes and how much that matters, because Utah State's been the one defying that.
True.
Like UNLV is sitting in basically the same position that Utah State's been in the last couple of years. New coach, host of new players, questions of are they going to fit the team together? Are they going to manage to pull this together? Can they have, can they pull together that cohesive unit that a lot of these other teams have? And people doubted Utah State, and I know there's some people that got mad at the doubt that got thrown Utah State's way. So I don't know, with UNLV being optimistic, I don't know. I know I was kind of downtrodden on them last week, but it's like, as you think about it and compared to Utah State situation, maybe they can pull it off. But I guess the one thing that's really different, though, is that Utah State has had the last 10 or so years of history where they've been good just about no matter what. UNLV doesn't have that. So I suppose that's the biggest difference between doubting Utah State, where it's like, don't doubt them. They're always there.
Yeah.
And UNLV, it's like you're pumping them up. It's like no matter what they've done, they've never been at the top.
The classic analogy is just down the street from their campus. UNLV basketball is just like a glitzy casino on the Las Vegas Strip. On the outside, there's flashing lights. It looks exciting. Before you go in, you're excited about what it might look like, and maybe I'll have a good time in there, and things will work well for me when I go in. But at the end of the night, you walk away, your money is gone, you're frustrated that you didn't have the time that you thought you were going to have, and it just was disappointing and not anything close to what you thought you were going to get into.
Well, no,
and that is UNLV basketball.
All it was just a bunch of old ladies gambling on the slot machines and, and you losing all your money at the blackjack table.
Right. Yes, exactly.
The smell of cigarette smoke and all that.
Wafting all over you, whether you want it or not.
Yeah, it's just... So we'll have to see what happens from these Mountain West teams, because I think it's pretty interesting looking at the landscape of the Mountain West, especially with Utah State just now having that different perspective. They're no longer that team that's just wondering what their team is going to look like. You've got the foundation of your team, head coach, star player, a couple of other returning starters. You're going to add a lot of transfers, or like 5 transfers. You're going to add 5 new freshmen. It's like there's going to be more turnover than maybe you were used to back in, like, say, 2005. But based on the relative to everyone else, the Aggies have a decent amount of returning production. So they have this different perspective than they have. So it'll be a very different offseason looking at Utah State as one of the preseason standards and then waiting to see what happens with the rest of the conference. Do they catch up to Utah State, much like the Aggies did to everyone else each of the last 4 or 5 seasons, every time they had a new head coach?
Yeah, the biggest difference is that Utah State has a basketball culture. Yeah. They've got a fan culture that's there. These other places, some do, some have had moments, but it hasn't been as consistent. And, talking about rosters before we move on, we really didn't get a chance to talk about this yesterday, but former Aggie Deyton Albury looks like he has narrowed his choices down to 2 teams, and one of them could still be in the Mountain West. There's a chance that Utah State could see one of their former players, but in a different jersey.
Yeah, New Mexico has been courting Deyton Albury, and he could step in there. I know he's not Donovan Dent, but I think they would very much appreciate the kind of threat that he is. Obviously, New Mexico got to see him twice. Eric Olin got to see him once when he played against UC San Diego. So, very good player. And he could also go to USC. Apparently, he's the John Rothstein, I believe, was one who reported that Deyton Albury has narrowed his choice to 2 teams, USC and New Mexico. And I guess it just comes down to, does he feel like USC, because USC is probably offering more NIL, but while NIL certainly plays a factor in players coming and going and where they're going to commit, unless it's significantly better, honestly, New Mexico ends up being a pretty solid choice, because USC, like, I swear, like, every year I see a bunch of guys go to USC, like, transfer there, and then they just disappear. Like, Boise State had their one wing, I forget his name, Ogbo, I think, where he transferred to USC, left Boise State behind, and then I don't think he ever got on the floor. And I would kind of worry about Deyton Albury having that exact same experience, especially with this next year being his last year. He got it, he's already playing with house money because he wasn't expecting to get this year, but take the fullest advantage. Like, if you want to get the bag, USC is probably going to offer you that. But to get the fullest experience out of his final year, I'd honestly, if I were in his camp, I'd say take a long look at New Mexico. I know Aggie fans don't want to see him in a New Mexico jersey, but to me, I feel like that ends up being a really good option for him, where he can be a key player on that team. The Pit would absolutely love him, but we're gonna have to see if Aggie fans have to figure out their feelings about Deyton Albury if they have another beloved player end up on another Mountain West team.
Yeah. 435-339-0321 if you want to chime in. We need to take another quick timeout here on the Full Court Press. Cache Valley's Community Cinco de Mayo celebration will be on Saturday from noon to 8 p.m. at the Cache County Fairgrounds. Stop by. There'll be live music, mariachi bands, fun entertainment for the whole family, and a lot of different food vendors on hand celebrating Mexican heritage. There'll be traditional piñatas even. So stop by, have some fun Saturday from noon to 8, presented by Members First Credit Union, DD Auto and Salvage, and Presto Products. 435-339-0321 is the Young Power Sports of Logan text line, and we were talking about UNLV and Las Vegas. And 9315 says, we all know that Jason goes and watches all the Asian ladies see how fast they can press the buttons on the slots.
I don't know. I make trips to Vegas like 3 times a year these days, so I have to walk by them. Well, I don't know. They don't have like the same like rows of slot machines. Usually they're just like little circles and whatnot, and they have all these weird themes. And it's like you see them after like NFL teams. I see that a lot where it's like, themed after NFL teams. Like, I don't know if I want to go on the slot machine for the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Cleveland Browns. Like, just saying, those ones should probably be left alone.
Yeah, don't touch that. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, not the greatest luck there.
NBA playoffs continue tonight, and we've got several games on the schedule. One game already into the second quarter. The Bucks taking it to the Pacers. Bucks trying to stay alive in this one. No
Damian Lillard.
Damian Lillard, thank you, after tearing his Achilles. But they're trying to stay alive in this one. Indiana leads that series 3-1. That's on NBA TV right now. At 5:30, Pistons are at the Knicks. Magic are at the Celtics at 6:30 on NBA TV. And then the nightcap on TNT, Clippers and Nuggets, the only series that's tied 2-2.
Yeah, because we have 2 series that have gone 4-0, and then all but the Nuggets-Clippers series are 3-1, aside from those 4-0. You mentioned Pacers leading the Bucks 3-1. The 2 other games we've got tonight, or 2 of the other games, Knicks lead the Pistons 3-1. They could close this one out. And then you mentioned Celtics Magic. You can probably guess who's leading that one, 3-1. And so those games will be interesting in the sense of, okay, can any one of those teams force a game 6? Maybe the Pistons manage to force a game 7. I don't know. We'll see if any of these 3-1 series end up further than 6 games. Looks like we're going to get a game 6 with Pacers-Bucks. But really, the one really interesting, like, must-watch series at this point is the Nuggets and Clippers. And mind you, it's kind of been like that from game one in that series, but a series like Lakers Timberwolves cooled off slightly. We'll see with game 5 tomorrow. Rockets Warriors in a similar sense kind of cooled off after the Warriors went up 3-1. Where you get
but those games have been tight. They've been exciting.
So like the games will be interesting, I think, but the series drama is kind of cooling off. Tempers aren't cooling off in the Rockets Warriors series.
No.
They're still going at each other. Dylan Brooks might take a body in Draymond too, with how dirty they're both playing. But the series drama is kind of tapering off, where the Nuggets and Clippers still have close games. You got the first ever buzzer-beating dunk in NBA playoff history with Aaron Gordon, and you've got that crucial game 5. And so there's a ton of excitement there, even though I'm writing off a lot of these other 3-1 series. I think we're going to get some pretty good games from some of those series. I know the Pistons are going to be ticked off about, losing that game against the Knicks when the referees admitted they made a mistake. And then obviously we'll see if Luka and the Lakers can manage to get another game in there, and we'll see if the Rockets can manage to pull back from 3-1. But I don't know. It's the Warriors have seemed to prove that they're the better team with all their veteran experience. Yeah,
I mean, the game was decided by 3 points, but Houston missed 12 free throws. So that's kind of showing the youth and inexperience, or just what's on the line, not being able to handle some of the pressure of a playoff game can be a little bit tough. But also last night, speaking of last night, it was the Cavaliers just running away from the Heat. And they've just dominated that series. Donovan Mitchell and company have just been fantastic. Sam Merrill, again, got a start for Cleveland, so it's always fun to watch him get solid playing time and help his team advance into the second round.
Is it a coincidence that in the 2 games that Sam Merrill has started, that the Cavaliers have won by 37 and 55 points, whereas the other 2 games they won by 21 and 9? Like, just saying. Like, I know
I like the trajectory.
Kind of a numbers guy, and that's what the numbers are telling me. The Cavaliers' average margin of victory is like 15 when they start somebody else over Sam Merrill, and their average margin of victory when they start him is 46. So
keep starting Sam Merrill.
Yeah, it'll probably lead to good things. We'll see who they play in the second round. It's looking like it's going to be the Pacers. That's assuming they can close out this series. They may not close it out in game 5, though.
Yeah, I mean, and Darius Garland, when he gets healthy, he deserves that starting spot.
Yeah, he'll probably end up starting. That's obviously the reason why Sam Merrill is starting right now is, injury. But obviously he'll go back to his spot on the bench even when Garland gets healthy. But yeah, Sam Merrill will continue to be a staple in the playoff rotation, which again, it's fun to see. And it was nice to see him get back into the scoring yesterday too, where he went scoreless in his start, but in this last one he was able to drain 3 3-pointers and also be plus 31 in the game.
Yeah, that's incredible. He also had a rebound, an assist, and a steal, so he helped out in a variety of different ways. But no starter for Cleveland last night played more than 25 minutes. They didn't have to. Miami just did not have anything going on, and Cleveland knew it, and they just put that series to bed, and now they move on to wait to see who their next opponent's going to be. All right, got to take another time out here in the Full Court Press, but when we come back, the stat that blew our minds and our player of the week. Spring is definitely here, and it's time to get your machines moving. They've got everything you need at Napa for like all the oil brands, Schaefer's, Amsoil, Mobil, Valvoline, Chevron, Royal Purple, and others. And if you want it ready when you come in, you can buy online and pick it up in store at napaonline.com. Locally owned, Preston and Providence, Napa Auto Parts. So it's Tuesday, and on Tuesdays, we like to give some shout-outs to some individuals who we think stand out in what they did, and our player of the week, and then also find a stat that really stands out to us. So let's start off with our players that stood out to us in their various field of competition.
Time to see who the real MVP is.
If you have a good game, your game is going to say that. You don't have to say it.
Puts a lot of cool things in perspective anytime you're the first time doing something.
It's the Full Court Press Player of the Week.
Let's go! All right, Jason, who stood out to you this week?
We got Brianna Raven, Utah State women's track and field. This last week at the Aggie Invitational, she had 3 performances that ranked top 10 in school history. She's the first Aggie to have 3 top 10 performances in a single day. In a single day in this season. So she had a long jump of 6.11 meters, and then that was sixth. That was second all-time in USU history. She also ran the 4x100, and then she ran her first ever 100-meter race, and then she had an 11.87 in the 100-meter. So pretty solid day.
Very solid
for Utah State, and she earned the Women's Field Athlete of the Week for the Mountain West.
I'm going to go with Donovan Mitchell. I know he doesn't play for the Jazz anymore.
Traitor.
But I still enjoy watching him play. And look, in the last week, in his 4 games in their series, he scored 30, 30, 13, and 22. And in the closeout game, he was a plus 31. And really, he only played barely over a quarter. So he put 22 points, 5 assists in about 25 minutes of play.
A little more than a quarter.
Yeah, a little more than a quarter, but
that's
still,
2.
Very impressive by Donovan Mitchell. We don't have time to get to the music here or the fancy intro, but the stat that stood out to you.
I continued my trend of always preempting myself in the stat of my mind, but Aaron Gordon, first ever playoff buzzer-beating dunk in NBA history. Just going for a dunk as a buzzer beater is a bold choice, but fitting for Aaron Gordon, who should be a 2-time dunk champion.
Yes, very true. I'm going to go with to the NHL. They're a defensive player, Simon Benoit, won it in overtime on Thursday. Simon Nemec won it in overtime on Friday. And Jake Sanderson won an overtime game on Saturday. The first time in Stanley Cup playoffs history, a defenseman scored an overtime goal 3 days in a row. So there you go. That's going to do it for us. Have a great night, everybody. We'll be back at it again tomorrow.